What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, undefeated 3-division world champion, now former undisputed 2-division world champion, still the unified welterweight world champion, superstar boxer who is widely acknowledged and recognized as the #1 best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. #1 best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, in Terence "Bud" Crawford, who is 40 wins, no losses, no draws, 31 big wins by way of knockout. He is 36 years of age, 5'8" with a 74-inch arm reach. Terence Crawford is no longer the undisputed welterweight world champion, as Terence "Bud" Crawford has been stripped of his International Boxing Federation welterweight title, right? With that said, undefeated welterweight superstar, the phenom, as I refer to him, in Jaron Boots Ennis. Jaron Boots Ennis, the phenom, as I refer to him as, who is 31 wins, no losses, no draws, 28 big wins by way of knockout. You heard what I said. 28 big wins by knockout. These two together are knockout machines. But with that said, Jaron Boots Ennis is 26 years of age, 5'10" with a 74-inch arm reach. They have a lot of similarities, although Jaron Boots Ennis does not like the comparison. He says that Terence Crawford is not a switch fighter like I am. They both switch from southpaw to orthodox. But Jaron Boots Ennis, he says, I'm more effective switching southpaw to orthodox. Terence Crawford is predominantly a southpaw. Over the years, Terence "Bud" Crawford has become a southpaw predominantly. In the past, when he fought the likes of British Prescott and he fought the likes of Ricky Burns, he would switch from southpaw to orthodox, but he would predominantly stay in the orthodox stance and use the southpaw stance just to gain a slight advantage, right? Now, he predominantly stays in southpaw. And in the biggest fight of his career, July 29th, the fight we all was anticipating to see against Earl the True Spence Jr., now former unified welterweight world champion, Earl the True Spence Jr. Terence Crawford did not switch to orthodox unless he was pressured and put in a position where he incidentally turned orthodox, but he didn't knowingly or consciously turn orthodox for an advantage. Just the position and the angle he was put in, he slightly turned orthodox. But predominantly, he was southpaw in that fight. Nonetheless, he dominated the fight. He dropped Errol Spence in the second round, twice in the 7th round, then stopped him in the 9th round. But this was the fight we were all clamoring for. We wanted to see Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford, and we got it. And the fight itself wasn't competitive. But Terence Crawford has to obligate a rematch. He has to concede to a rematch with Earl the True Spence Jr. because in the negotiations, they both decided that they both deserved an immediate rematch should either guy lose. And Errol Spence, he lost. And he's contractually in his right to petition for a rematch, not for the titles, but against Terence "Bud" Crawford. So he has the rights to Terence Crawford, not to the titles. So, Mr. Peoples, president of the IBF, he stated, I don't really care about no rematches with you and Errol Spence. I care about the rule book and what's best for the IBF and following the rules. And they removed Terence Crawford, who only had the IBF title. He only had the IBF title for 3 months. He inherited, okay, let's be right. Let's be real here. He inherited Jaron Boots Ennis as his mandatory. Jaron Boots Ennis was Errol Spence mandatory for over a year. But he only received Jaron Boots Ennis for a few months. Now, because of the style matchup and because of the way Terence Crawford beat Errol Spence Jr., the way he dominated that fight over Errol Spence Jr., and he was better in every aspect, the people want to see Terence Crawford in the ring with somebody who is athletically gifted as he is. Errol Spence, as I told you guys, he has a very vanilla style. okay? It is not a lot of flash and flare. He's very consistent. He's very molded, right? He's textbook. Now, he makes mistakes because nobody's perfect. But Errol Spence is very consistent with his approach and his style. He's a southpaw. He's big. He's fundamentally sound. And Errol Spence, he has an extremely high work rate. He breaks his opponents down. He doesn't have extremely fast hands, extremely fast feet. He doesn't use all these exotic angles. He comes to win. He comes to destroy you. He comes to break you down physically, mentally, puts pressure on you, and gets you out of there. That's who he is. Terence Crawford has flash and flare. Now the fans want to see that flash and flare met with flash and flare. Who has that? Jaron Boots Ennis. Boots Ennis has that. He has that ability. He has the flash and flare. He has extremely long arms, with 74-inch arms. He's extremely tall at 5'10". He's very athletic, fast feet, fast hands. He has faster hands and faster feet than Terence Bud Crawford. So now people want to see that matchup. And because Terence Crawford was stripped, immediately people started to tell you that Terence Crawford ducked Jaron Boots Ennis. But he didn't duck Jaron Boots Ennis because Terence Crawford only inherited Jaron Boots Ennis as a mandatory for 3 months. Errol Spence had Jaron Boots Ennis as a mandatory for over a year. But what happened was he was focused on making the Terence Crawford fight, and the fans were not complaining because they wanted to see Errol Spence and Terence Crawford for Undisputed, and they thought Terence Crawford was ducking Errol Spence Jr. So the fight to be made was Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, and there were whispers, but there wasn't a bunch of people banging on the door to see Jaron Boots Ennis versus Errol the True Spence Jr. They weren't demanding it, so the IBF wasn't demanding it. And the IBF didn't want to stand in the way of Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford. Massive, mega, undisputed welterweight showdown. So they didn't involve themselves. They didn't become a distraction. They waited till the fight unfolded. They waited till we got a winner, right? We got a conclusion to the whole saga of Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. And then he stripped Terence Crawford. He was the winner. Now, Terence Crawford, he's saying, I heard this movie before. I seen this movie before. Now the fans are bombarding Terence Crawford with the notion that he's ducking Jaron Boots Ennis, and he's afraid of Jaron Boots Ennis. Did that just motivate Terence Crawford? Because he has to rematch Errol Spence. Errol Spence activated the rematch clause. The IBF, they released the statement that they informed Terence Crawford that he needed to begin negotiations with Jaron Boots Ennis, or he was going to be stripped by September 24th. And by September 22nd, Terence Crawford and his team informed the IBF and Mr. Peebles, president, that they cannot legally engage in negotiations with Jaron Boots Ennis because Errol Spence activated and exercised his right for the rematch clause. So they cannot interfere and start beginning negotiating with somebody else, or Terence Crawford can be sued. And the IBF released that information. So he has to fulfill this obligation, and this talks that Terence Crawford, Errol Spence can fight in February. And it's going to be at 154, junior middleweight, where Errol Spence wanted this rematch. Now, Terence Crawford took to social media, and he says, I heard this movie before. Y'all gonna say the same thing when it's all said and done. You're going to say that I'm scared, that I'm ducking. But once I win the fight, you're going to say he's inexperienced. He wasn't ready. I think that the fans just might have motivated Terence Crawford to hold on to his titles and fight Jaron Boots Ennis. Now, I know his trainer, longtime trainer, mentor, and big brother figure, and two-time trainer of the year, because he will be trainer of the year again, Brian Bomac McIntyre, says Jaron Boots Ennis doesn't bring anything to the table. There's nothing in it for us to fight Jaron Boots Ennis. Now, keep in mind, They had their sights set on Jermell Charlo for undisputed at 154, but Jermell Charlo has been stripped of his WBO title. Now there's two champions, Jermell Charlo and there's Tim Tszyu. So in order for Terence Crawford to be undisputed at 154, Terence Crawford will have to have multiple fights at 154, not even including the Errol Spence fight. He wants that legacy marquee mega fight, career-defining fight against four-division world champion, Mexican superstar boxer, who's considered the face of the sport of boxing in the undisputed super middleweight, Saul Canelo Alvarez. That's the fight that he really, truly wants. But in the meantime, Canelo Alvarez has fights that he has to satisfy, that the world is demanding, and that's him versus David Benavidez. So he may not even be available. So with that said, Terence Crawford sends out a warning. I heard this movie before. Is Terence Crawford going to go back down and fight Jaron Boots Ennis? If Jaron Boots Ennis gets a fight with Keith Thurman and dominates and beats Keith Thurman, stops Keith Thurman, that will make enough noise to lure Terence Crawford into a Jaron Boots Ennis fight. That'll make enough noise. And Jaron Boots Ennis might go to 54 for that fight. Because if he beats Keith Thurman, right? He beats Keith Thurman. He's already a champion. He might fight Keith Thurman for a unification. That's the fight he needs to lure Terence Crawford into a fight. Because then it would be worth his while. You beat a marquee fighter like Keith Thurman and possibly stop and knock out Keith Thurman, make a statement to the world. The world would clamor for Terence Crawford and Jaron Boots Ennis. So, after this Errol Spence fight, Terence Crawford's going to have to make a decision. And I don't think the Canelo Alvarez fight is going to present itself. So after that, is he going to fight Tim Tszyu? Is he going to fight Jermell Charlo? Or Jaron Boots Ennis? And if Jaron Boots Ennis can secure that marquee fight with a Keith Thurman, that just might be the fight, because he's going to hear enough whispers, and Terence Crawford is competitive enough and motivated enough that he's going to want that fight. He's going to want that fight. So let's see how this unfolds and plays out. But that's all I got for y'all. Make sure you hit the like button. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV. All one word. I'm gone. Peace.